We saw in the first video that music literacy was invented by the church by using a known tune on paper. Sound came before signs. Now, when we think about literacy, we think about schools and universities. We do not think about the church. And schools and universities typically teach music theory first. That's just the way they do it. In this video, we're going to hear professional educators, Chris Muntz and Carol Kruger, tell the story of how they rediscovered that sound must come before signs, before theory.
So first, let's for those few in my audience who might not know who you are, why don't you just tell us about you? Who are you, and where do you come from, and why do you do what you do?
Well, I've been teaching choral music for the better part of 45 years, and it's who I am. When I started, I went out there without the skills and knowledge of how to do this. And as I taught those first 5 years, I realized how unprepared I was. Sure, I could play a 4-part open score, I could do all those things, but my kids were high school kids and they had really no skills.
Right.
And so it meant, by rote, playing the piano over and over. And it's the slowest way to teach. And really, I was the only one working. So after 5 years, I said, there's got to be a better way. So I want my kids to be able to do this without me. I want them to go on and be able to sit under a tree and read a piece of music like they would a book.
Right.
I didn't want them to have someone spoon feeding them or the piano playing all the time. I learned along the way that it's very much like linguistic literacy. And so if you compare it between the two, it may help you understand how to do music literacy, because we've all been through linguistic literacy. So if we think back to how we learned that, it will really help you teach your students.
And so we are supporting literacy, and what the other really bizarre, and I want to get your take on this because I get really bizarre comments from people because I talk about this so much on the show, that it seems like I'm driving too hard on literacy because it's just not the only thing about teaching choir. And I'm like, okay, of course it is. But the reality is what Carol just said, which is we don't have a too much literacy problem in music education.
No, we don't.
We have a not even close to enough problem. And so if I'm going to be the guy like shouting on the internet about this, and Carol's going to be going around doing these things all over the country, there's a need there. And so what are your reactions to that, thoughts about that?
Well, all you have to do is come with me one summer and you will see the teachers that tear up when they finally get some simple things that they never got before. And they will show their frustration in the classroom of not knowing how to spiral it and make it happen. They may have the best of heart for it, but if you don't have the tools and you've never been walked through it, how are you going to go teach something you don't really know?
Yeah.
And it is a process. Unfortunately, most of us did not get any kind of a spiral in our oral skills classes.
Nope.
In fact, many times we were taught by grad students who really didn't even want to be teaching it. And let's be honest, even a lot of the theory teachers don't want to be teaching it, or their composers. That's the last thing on their mind, is to do that. They see rote teaching in the choirs, they see rote teaching in the orchestra, they see rote teaching in the band. Listen, here's your rhythm. Rather than going back and shaping it by echo my patterns on a neutral. Now, echo my patterns as I label them on whatever system you're using. Now, I'm going to do it on a neutral. You give it back and label it to me. And if they can't label it, they're not ready to go to reading, any more than a kid would be with, let me give you another example. So we teach our little kids. The kitty says, meow, meow. The doggy says, woof, woof. It isn't long. We say, what does the kitty say? And they tell us, meow, meow. But what if I said to you, what does the aardvark say? And I usually get everybody looking at me with, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, no, you weren't taught what the sound of the aardvark was. And we teach our kids tonics, do, mi, so, but we don't label them. We are teaching them all kinds of intervals, but we don't label them. So how are they going to know what it is and give it back to us? We're speaking aardvark to them. And so we have got to get their ears to hear it before we ever show it. Yet you look at most of the books, you open it up and it starts right with visual. Wrong. And yet we've known this since the 60s when Gordon came along. We've known it with Kodai. He said you have to prepare the ears first, and then you prepare the eyes. And that goes back to the 1920s. Then we go back to Pestalozzi, 1890s. And he said, sound before sight, before theory. But I didn't really know what that meant. It really meant I needed to teach those ears. Nobody taught me how to teach those ears. What's the process to teach those ears? What's the spiral? How do I layer it for him? Once I started to understand that, my kids started to hear like crazy. In fact, but they do because we did the ears before the eyes, before the theory.
Right.
What did I start with? Theory. I had those poor high school kids doing the circle of bits.
Sounds like we're philosophically aligned here on this, because
Yes.
what I believe as an educator is I am responsible for each individual child's development.
Amen.
I am not responsible primarily for how good my choir sounds.
Mhm, I agree.
But what's great about that is that when you develop the individual singers, your choir sounds better.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah, it's a happy accident that happens after you've developed the individual singer.
So I developed all kinds of the patterns, starting with simple, way up to very, very difficult. Really a Gordon thing, but he starts with all the patterns. And of course, he starts with diatonic because we're a diatonic culture. We're not a pentatonic culture. And he also believes strongly in major and minor simultaneously.
Thing.
No,
And
it's
I think
not.
this is where my beef is. We are illiterate as music teachers in how the brain works.
We're also illiterate, though, in the process. If we had been taught the process, we wouldn't be illiterate in the brain function of how it works. But we
Right.
were never taught it.
Yeah.
So then we're asking to do something we have no idea. Again, it's like learning a foreign language or the aardvark. We should have been taught this way. Okay, so you weren't. Don't cry over it. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And our colleges then need to go in, if they accept us,
Mhm.
they need to go in and make sure they fill in a lot of our gaps. You can't go here when they're missing this.
So we just heard 21st century educators plead for their colleagues to relearn the order that church music invented in the 11th century, 1,000 years ago. Sound must come before sight. Music theory came much later, in the 16th, 17th century. Guido invented solfege, the first example of what they call in the video labeling. There is in music a proportionality, an order that Greeks and medieval mathematicians, philosophers, and musicians accepted as just true, even though they could not explain it. Guido labeled that truth. Now, what they believed was true was never disproven, but we modern people, we prefer to refer to inventions that came later, like music theory, like the piano, because we invented those, we control them, we know them. We prefer circular reasoning, in fact. For an example of labeling in a university will be now, what's a half step? Oh, let me show you a major scale. Oh, what's a major scale? Oh, but well, the major scale depends on where the half step is. That circular definition stops usually at the piano or at the instrument, and the piano becomes the source, and the pianist becomes the high priest. That's where truth comes from. If we accept half steps and full steps as gifts, like the Greeks, like Guido did, then we can label those gifts. Do, re, mi, fa, sol. Then we can explain the major scale, and everything is in order and makes sense. We do not have to use that church origin story. There is a way to teach music literacy, stepping away from the circular reasoning, stepping away from the piano. That's what Chris Munce is going to demonstrate in the next video. Thank you.